All right, today we're tackling something that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, the plan to build a completely self-sustaining city on Mars. But for Elon Musk and SpaceX, this isn't some fantasy. It's being framed as humanity's ultimate backup plan. So let's get into why this is even a thing. The whole massive endeavor really starts with this one pretty unsettling question, doesn't it? What if Earth fails us? And that question immediately shifts the entire conversation from, simple space exploration to the long-term survival of our species.
It's a really weird paradox when you think about it. Our civilization is more technologically advanced than at any other point in history. But at the same time, we're more aware than ever of just how fragile everything is. Whether it's climate instability, the threat of some huge global conflict, or pandemics that can just bring the entire world to a grinding halt, we're constantly reminded that our whole complex society is kind of balanced on a knife's edge. And that is the exact problem this whole Mars plan is designed to solve.
So, the solution they've landed on? It's pretty radical. The idea is that for humanity to have any real long-term security, we just can't afford to have all our eggs in one basket. The ultimate insurance policy against the planet-wide catastrophe isn't a better bunker. It's another planet. It's like a backup hard drive for humanity itself.
So let's really dig into the core mission here. What's the fundamental why that's driving this incredible, almost unbelievable undertaking? Well, it all comes down to creating a viable backup plan for all of us.
And let's be super clear about this. For SpaceX, Mars isn't some side quest or a vanity project. It is the mission. The goal here isn't to build a luxury resort in space or anything like that. It's about giving humanity a second home, a way to make sure that one single catastrophic event on Earth doesn't mean game over for our species.
Okay, so the big question, why Mars? The moon's right there, isn't it? It's so much closer. Well, the choice really comes down to brass tacks, to practicality and resources. Mars has a day that's almost the same length as Earth's, which is a huge, huge advantage for things like agriculture and just human psychology. It also has an atmosphere. Sure, it's thin, but that carbon dioxide is a resource. You can actually process it to create breathable oxygen and even the methane you need for rocket fuel. The moon, on the other hand, with its brutal 2-week-long nights and no atmosphere to speak of, that's a much, much tougher place to try and build a self-sustaining city.
Of course, you can have the best plan in the world, but if you can't actually get there, it's all just a dream. And this is where the entire vision hinges. So let's talk about the engine of this interplanetary dream, the vehicle that makes it all possible, Starship.
So what is Starship exactly? Well, think of it less like a traditional rocket and more like an interplanetary airline. It's designed from the ground up to be a fully and rapidly reusable transportation system, one that can haul both crew and massive amounts of cargo to orbit, to the moon, and of course, to Mars.
See, to build a city on another planet, you need to move a ridiculous amount of stuff. We're not just talking about a few science experiments, we're talking about heavy machinery, life support systems, power plants, the whole shebang. The ability to refuel in orbit is what really opens up the long journey to Mars. It's kind of like topping up the tank before a really long road trip. But the full reusability, that is the absolute game changer. That's the key that unlocks the economics of the whole thing.
And that brings us right to the money. For a city on Mars to be anything other than a complete fantasy, the cost of launching mass into space has to plummet. We're talking about a cost reduction of more than 90% compared to old-school throwaway rockets. This is probably the single biggest financial hurdle of the entire project.
And Musk himself put it pretty bluntly. His logic here is just rooted in basic physics and economics. At the end of the day, a city is just a huge pile of processed materials. If you can't get those materials to Mars cheaply and in enormous quantities, a city on Mars will always, always be just a dream. Starship is designed to be the answer to that fundamental problem.
Okay, so you've got the why and you've got the how to get there. But what do you actually do when you arrive? Well, the plan is pretty methodical, and it's all about safety and laying the groundwork first. It's a two-phase approach that boils down to a really simple idea. You send the tools before you send the workers. So the whole colonization plan is split into two really distinct stages. First, an army of robots gets sent ahead to prepare the site. They'll do all the dangerous, initial heavy lifting. And only when the basic infrastructure is built, tested, and ready to go will the first humans make that long journey. And what are these robots actually doing? Well, it's all super practical stuff. First, find the water, because water is life, right? It's for drinking, growing food, and you can even make rocket fuel from it. Next, set up the power grid. Think massive solar arrays. Then you've got to prove you can generate oxygen from the Martian atmosphere on an industrial scale, not just in some little lab experiment. And finally, you land all the big toys, all the heavy machinery and construction materials the first human crews are going to need from day one.
And this is a really important point to get your head around. The first humans to land on Mars aren't going to be explorers in the traditional sense, planting flags and chipping at rocks for science. No, they're going to be industrial workers and engineers. Their mission is to assemble the habitats, connect the power systems, and make absolutely sure the life support is stable. It is a construction project in one of the most hostile environments imaginable.
So that brings us to the human element. What would it actually be like to live on Mars? Let's dive into the pretty harsh realities of what daily life would look like for those first settlers.
Yeah, that classic sci-fi image of giant glass domes and sprawling cities under an open red sky. You got to throw that out the window, at least for a very long time. The number one enemy on Mars isn't the extreme cold or the thin air. It's the constant, unforgiving radiation blasting down from space.
This means survival on Mars is going to look very different from the movies. Habitats will have to be heavily shielded, which most likely means building them underground or burying them under several meters of Martian soil. Life will be pretty confined, powered by vast solar farms or maybe even nuclear reactors. All the food will have to be grown indoors, hydroponically, under artificial lights. In the beginning, it's going to feel less like a new world and more like a permanent, isolated research station in Antarctica, just on another planet.
Okay, but what about terraforming? You know, the idea of making Mars more like Earth. It's a fantastic, grand vision, but for now, it's still firmly in the realm of science fiction. The kind of technology you'd need to thicken the atmosphere and warm up the entire planet, it just doesn't exist yet. That's a potential goal for centuries from now, not a requirement for building the first city.
So we've gone through the why, the how, and what life might be like. Let's pull back and look at this whole project for what it really is, an absolutely massive gamble with a goal that could literally redefine what it means to be human. Because the finish line here isn't just landing a few people on Mars. The real goal, the thing that determines if this is a success or a failure, is creating a city that can sustain itself completely independent from Earth. This means having a big enough population and the ability to manufacture everything it needs right there. If the Mars colony forever depends on supply runs from Earth, then it isn't a real backup for humanity. It has to be able to survive on its own.
And we have to be brutally realistic about the challenges. This could absolutely fail. The engineering problems are mind-boggling, the cost is going to be astronomical, and the risk to human life is severe and, frankly, unavoidable. Musk himself has been very blunt about this. The first pioneers will face a very real chance of dying.
But then again, it helps to put this into some historical perspective, right? Every monumental leap in human history, from circumnavigating the globe to the Apollo program, was considered impossible by most people at the time. This Mars plan is simply the next audacious leap in that long line of impossible projects.
And that really brings us back to the final, most crucial idea to take away from all this. The goal isn't to escape Earth's problems, it's to back up Earth. It's about ensuring that our culture, our science, our collective history, everything we are as a species, has a chance to survive no matter what happens here on our home planet. It is the ultimate insurance policy for humanity, and according to the people building it, the clock is ticking.